changes to the agenda, so we will go directly to the recognition of our visitors. Today, we are having a presentation from our early education and pre-K providers. I would ask Dora if you would introduce yourself, and I'm not sure who else is going to be participating in the presentation. If you would introduce them as well, that would be great.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the board for having us. My name is Dora Levinson. I work for Building Bright Futures, which is the Early Childhood State Advisory Council for Vermont. And Mariah Carney, who has been attending these meetings, is actually going to begin, and then Janice Stockman is going to give us a little bit more information. So I'm going to pass it over to Mariah. And is it possible for Janice to do a screen share? Just
yes. Let me just click the, yes, I think Janet, you should be able to do it now, Janice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. I know you're not seeing this yet, but I'm working on it.
Mariah, maybe you can get started while Janice is pulling that up. Oh, there we go.
Hi everyone, my name is Mariah Carney and I am the lead teacher and director at Westby Nursery School, and I am the representative for the private pre-K programs. Act 166 is universal pre-K, and it gives access to publicly funded pre-kindergarten education to Vermont children between the ages of 3 and 5. Pre-K programs can be public or private, and we have both in our district. Private programs provide 10 hours of pre-K education per week for 35 weeks in the school year at no cost to families. And the public pre-K programs, they follow the school day schedule and are also free to families. Universal pre-K is administered jointly by 2 state agencies, the Agency of Education and the Agency of Human Services. Pre-K programs meet specific qualifications that demonstrate that they're high quality and effective. And Janice, our early childhood coordinator, is going to tell you some of those qualifications that each program meets in order to be high quality and effective. But before she does that, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Janice, because she's really been a huge support to the private pre-K programs and the public school programs. And she's really helped to build this bridge between both programs so that we can all work together to meet the needs of children. So thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Mariah. When Vermont decided to recognize pre-K as part of the continuum of education in Vermont, it wanted to make a distinction between programs that are of minimal standards and programs that are of high quality, since public funding was going to be provided. And so they identified some characteristics that we know that provide those high quality programs that kids benefit from the most. So starting with the teacher, and we know that effective education starts with effective teachers. And for young children, it's really important that their instruction is delivered by licensed educators who have specialized training in early childhood development and early learning opportunities. Effective programs use evidence-based practices that lead to positive outcomes for kids. And they're provided in learning environments that are intentionally designed to suit young children. The learning activities and the curriculum that's used in high quality programs is aligned with Vermont's early learning standards. And finally, programs can make adaptations and accommodations so that all kids are able to have access and participate in the learning that's offered. We value inclusion in this state, and high quality programs are able to include all kids. Windham Southeast was one of the first districts and supervisory unions to begin to have partnerships with pre-K programs back in the mid-2000s. And I know that there were only about 3 districts around the state that started this. And we were one of them. And I believe that the program Mariah works in was one of our first partners. At that time, we were pioneers, and there weren't a lot of rules and there weren't a lot of restrictions for the funding. So and this was before my time, but I remember, because I worked in for the state at that time, that districts were using the funding to enhance the salaries of early education teachers, to provide extra professional development. There was a lot of leeway for how the funding could be used. And over time, more restrictions came, and the funding became targeted towards families, so that the funding is now used to offset 10 hours of pre-K education per week for every child that participates. More recently, in the last decade, our district has started developing some public pre-K programs in our school buildings. And we have 4 right now. Brattleboro Town has 1 located at Oak Grove. Dummerston, Guilford, and Putney all have preschools in their school buildings. This year, we have 12 active partnerships with our private community-based early childhood programs. That's down a little bit from last year. The pandemic has led to some program closures and somewhat smaller enrollment of children in pre-K. So this year, our partnerships serve 183 preschoolers, which allows us to meet the state mandate to provide universal access to high quality pre-K. Last year, I think we were at about 256 children in the private partner programs, and I think somewhere around 16 partnerships we had. This year, our public programs serve 35 kids. Last year it was a little bit more, a little bit higher, 60, closer to 60, I believe. So I'm going to end by talking about the benefits of Act 166, which is the state law that allows funding to go to preschool and especially these partnerships. There are far more kids that can receive preschool funding because of the partnerships that we have with our community-based programs. We could never serve those kids in our school buildings. We don't have the space or the capacity to do that. This particular program gives families the choice for the kind of early learning that meets their child and family needs. So if a family wants a particular philosophy like Montessori or Waldorf, or needs to have their children enrolled in a school that's close to their home or close to their work, partial day, full school day, full school year. This Act 166 allows families the kind of choice that they can make for their own family. Our kids have early learning experiences and background knowledge and skills that enable them to be ready for kindergarten. And I think that our kindergartens are more well off because of the kinds of experiences that kids have prior to starting school in our school buildings. And then we've been able to create a learning network for early childhood teachers that cross the boundaries of private and public, sometimes cross the boundaries of pre-K and kindergarten. So we participate together in professional development. We see each other as colleagues. The district has invited and involved the private pre-K teachers to our in-service days and professional learning communities that we design. This year, it's a little different. Obviously, we are doing everything virtually. We have weekly grade level meetings where the private teachers are invited to attend. And, you know, I feel like our community is richer because of the relationships between public and private teachers.
Thank you so much, Janice and Mariah. I am just going to wrap up. We've barely scratched the surface. There is so much great information out there about all of the programs and about the partnerships, and of course, more than anyone can digest about Act 166 and legislation. But we did want to give this overview. Each month, starting actually in October, there is a monthly report on these 12 programs, and just a little update, how many children are enrolled, special activities. I think the October report, as well as some of this month's report, have a little bit of information about response to the pandemic and perhaps opening of a hub or not. There's also Early Education Services is a private partner program, so there's definitely more information in that report as well. Janice is a great source of information, as is Mariah, and you can always reach out to any of the three of us. And we are happy to answer questions now as well, if there's a little bit of time for that, David.
Yes.
Or happy to, email or talk offline after.
Yeah, we've already got a couple of
This
questions.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We already have a couple of questions from the board. I just want to remind people that typically we hear from board members first and then from the public, but we are here to hear from everybody, so you will be heard. And also, I wanted to, just while people are thinking about their questions or asking questions, for the three of you to think a little bit about how the board can help. Obviously, there's a lot of support, at least verbal support, for expanding early education. And there have to be some initiatives that are underway in the state. And if you could think a little bit, not right now, because I want to have the other board members comment first, but think a little bit about how the board or the administration could help with that process, because there's no question we all support it. So let me go right to Tim Maciel.
Okay, thanks. At our last board meeting, we had a terrific presentation by Special Ed, and I'm wondering if you can speak to a little about what you do for early childhood special ed needs. Then the second question is, how are we doing in preparing students this year for kindergarten? Will they be as prepared as they have been in past years? Just generally, how does it look?
Well, I'll take the first part of your question, because as the early childhood coordinator for our school district, I'm also the early childhood special ed coordinator. And so I wear two hats, or two kind of related hats. And for early childhood special ed, the default in early childhood is inclusion. So we don't have any special classrooms or special programs or separate programs for kids who are on IEPs. They are all included in every kind of program that is available to anyone in the community. They're supported by special educators, related service providers like speech and language pathologists. We have some para-educators who are used to work with the special educator to support instruction or provide one-to-one individual support. We do evaluations on kids, screenings, observations. We take our role seriously to help all kids have access to the same kind of learning opportunities and to participate as fully as possible in their education. We also see our role as supporting the teachers of kids with disabilities to understand the disability, to make accommodations in the classroom for them, to open communication and provide resources as much as possible, materials, equipment, that sort of thing. The other part of your question, how do we think kids are going to be prepared for kindergarten next year? I assume you're talking about in this COVID world, in the world of, in this pandemic. I would say that we know the numbers are down. So I know that there are families who are nervous about COVID, decided to keep their children out of preschool this year. I don't know how many of them off the top of my head are 4-year-olds and will go to kindergarten next year. But I know that in early childhood, we've worked really hard at seeing this unusual time as a way to build on family strengths, engage families to see what they do in their everyday lives as leading to learning opportunities for their children. There's a lot more outdoor time. I want to turn the question over to Mariah too, because I know she's actively involved in this firsthand. But there's a whole world available to kids that, from enriching their home experiences to nature and play outside that hasn't really changed that much from the pandemic. Maybe gets a little more focused.
I think also it's really early in the school year to tell. So I think that's a really great question, Tim. Teachers currently are working on checkpoints, which is part of a tracking system that we use. It's Teaching Strategies Goals. We collect observations and we rate the children on where they are on the developmental continuum. So once we have a chance to have some data to compare that to, we'll be able to answer that question better. But like Janice said, there's still quite a few opportunities that children are accessing, and there's a lot of information that's put out on social media and emails. So the children who aren't necessarily in our programs right now, I think they're still being able to access a lot of the things that we do in the classroom every day.
Okay, well, thanks for your answer. And I really, truly appreciate all you do. You serve such an important need.
Thank you.
Great,
Could
thank you.
This is Deb,
Yes.
can I add something?
Yes.
With all of what's being said, I couldn't agree more, but I do want to shed some light on what's happening at EES in our Head Start and early Head Start classrooms. And I think the board knows, because I did send this information out a while ago. We have 15 classrooms in total, but we have not been able to open all of them because we don't have enough teachers. And because of the pandemic, on any given day, if we have a teacher who needs to be out because she has, a symptom of COVID or a scheduled day off, we may not be able to open that classroom because we also have a short supply of substitute teachers. And as you all know, our children are the neediest of our population, and we have some pretty significant challenges to help support them through. And so there are days when we need to close classrooms, and that does not provide for continuity for the children. And so we are seeing an increase in the behavioral challenges. Now that's, I want to say, you know, I preface this with all of what Mariah and Janice said are certainly things that are happening at EES, but in terms of what, you know, how well children are prepared for, we're preparing children for kindergarten, I think that remains to be seen, because we don't really have out of the classrooms consistent continuity happening.
Thank you, Deb. Jackie?
Hi. So mine is a statement and then also a question. We ended up having a pre-K experience at Oak Grove, which is the collaboration between the public pre-K program and also early education services. And it was really wonderful because there was such an excellent mix of kids. We had a super diverse classroom, and we also had a teacher who was really focused on the very necessary social emotional education of a kid in pre-K. And I saw many kids in the room get like a tailored experience to what their needs were. Some of them were doing some early academics and some were just getting a lot of social emotional support. And I went into it really apprehensive, thinking kindergarten readiness, are they expecting him to read and all these things that are maybe I didn't think were as necessary for a 4-year-old. But in any event, it turned out to be the greatest experience. So I just have to ask if there are plans for more like expanded future collaborations with EES and the public pre-K programs locally, because I just think having such a diverse experience would benefit all children. And yeah, that might be a Deb question, but also thank you, Dora and Janice and Mariah, for your presentation, and whoever wants to answer. Thanks.
The answer is yes, Jackie. The answer is yes. We're definitely working on that all the time. And we've actually had some preliminary discussions about opening a second classroom at Oak Grove, but the pandemic kind of put us in a frozen mode with that last year.
Yes, I've got those preliminary plans all ready to go, as we at Oak Grove do have space available to open a second pre-K program, and I think it would be ideal. I think you bring up some great points, Jackie. It's really nice to see the combination of kids come together in one room, and it's been just a pleasure to be able to experience pre-K in a public school.
Thank you so much. That's really exciting to hear.
Michelle Green.
Hi. I was wondering, I'm wondering about this program. I'm wondering if there's eligibility requirements, or is this open to everybody? And I'm hearing limitations because of staffing, but if there's any like financial cap limitations on the amount of children that could be served. And along with that, I'm wondering how this information is being relayed back out and like publicized to the community so that they know about this opportunity.
Well, the only eligibility requirements for accessing the public funding are that the child has to be 3 by September 1st of the school year, and it goes up to kindergarten. There's not a cap. We serve everybody who comes to us, and throughout the year, as long as they were 3 by September 1st. I'm sorry, I forgot the rest of your question.
That's okay.
There's also, I just want to say that the program does have to be this high quality pre-qualified program. So it has to meet all of those criteria there's a rating scale of all early childhood education programs. So 0 to 5, 0 to and beyond. So it has to be a 4 or a 5-star program, and there are a couple of other criteria, and that information is sent out in lots of different ways throughout the year, and there are probably people who are missed, and that could be something that we can. So Janice, I don't know if you can tell.
Okay, so
outreach.
each spring we put notices in the paper and on social media for the enrollment in the public programs. Those notices go out around that time as well. Every preschool that is part of our partnership does their own marketing and advertises their services, and all of them share the information about the public funding. It's a very easy program to access. We take a registration form. The district, I maintain a spreadsheet of enrollment, and once you send the registration form, you're in and you get to benefit with the funding.
Are we meeting the preschool needs in this district, or are we do we fill up spaces and need to turn people away?
That is a really, that's almost a year by year answer. Sometimes the programs do fill up and they have waiting lists. This year, there's a smaller capacity because of space considerations. So programs are a little bit smaller this year. So we aren't serving as many kids. I suspect there are kids who still come to kindergarten without a preschool experience. And, that could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe there wasn't space. Maybe their parents didn't want them to. So
I would also say, if you remember, Janice was talking about one of the benefits of this program is that parents and families can choose which type of program they send their children to. So it's possible that a program that you're really excited about, or the only program that you're really excited about, is full. And so then you wouldn't be accessing the Act 166 funds or that publicly funded pre-kindergarten, but not necessarily but there might be space at a different program. I think that has happened sometimes. And I also want to just say that the state has a formula that they use for the tuition that is given for those 10 hours to the private programs.
Janice, in the past, I think it's you that has given us numbers about after the pre-K or after the kindergarten screening, the percentage of students that incoming students who have been in a pre-K program. Do you have any of that just easily at hand, or can you recall any? I remember in previous years it was well into the 90 percentile, but I don't know if, as you said, if that's different every year or not.
yes, and I don't have those numbers for this year's kindergarten class. Kindergarten registration got a little waylaid last year because
yeah. In the past, it's been relatively high percentage.
I would say between 80 and 90% of the kids coming into kindergarten in the past have had a pre-K experience, but that's still 20%.
Yeah.
10 to 20% who don't.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board members or the public? or any administrators for our educators here who are educating us?
Can I just add that there is information on the district's website about pre-K and all of the public and private partners and the registration form.
Great, thank you. Are there any what I had asked earlier about any initiatives or legislative actions that are on the horizon that the board might be able to support that you're aware of this year?
Well, you know, this isn't a legislative action, but locally, it looks like the mulberry bush is not going to end up having to close. And I don't know if that initiative or that endeavor needs any support from the school board or not, but I would just say that there are some really dedicated people in our community who rallied around the possibility of losing a pre-K partner, but also a program that served really young children, infants and toddlers as well. And it looks like it's pointing in a very positive direction where that program won't have to close, and it will be able to remain open and serve the upwards of 35 or so kids who really need a spot in our community.
And that was the program at the retreat that looked like it might have to
Exactly.
close. Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you. Tara Castine.
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute. I missed a little bit of the presentation, but this is primarily pertaining to Brattleboro. Is that correct?
No. It's the whole Windham Southeast School District and Vernon.
Okay.
And it's a statewide program. So it's every 3 and 4 and 5-year-old not enrolled in kindergarten is eligible for these hours.
So there's no, I will reach out and ask my questions separately based on past experiences with the program. But I'll ask those of you guys later. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or anything else you folks would like to share? Oh, there's another hand. Sean?
Yeah, I'd just like to say how nice it is to hear from educational professionals about pre-K. Both my kids were in school in WSESU, and there was, we had to go to private, which was a very good system, but no financial support at all. So it's really good to hear you talk in such a professional manner about what you do. And I realized you all come with a lot of training and a lot of education and a lot of dedication. So I think it's really nice.
Thank you.
I wonder if one of you would be willing to outline a little bit what the requirements are to be a licensed pre-K educator. I think a lot of people probably don't understand, and assuming the level of pay, they figure these people can't have a lot of training. But would you share a little bit about that, Deb or Dora or anyone?
Well, we are talking about licensed educators licensed by the Agency of Education. So that means they have at least a bachelor's degree. They have been recommended for licensure by either a 4-year institution, or many of our early educators in our community right now have received their license through an alternative route to licensure that's sponsored by our Agency of Education, and it's called the peer review process. So somebody without a license, but having a bachelor's degree and significant experience in the field of early education could put together a portfolio that shows that they meet the 60 or 70 separate competencies outlined by the AOE that mark an early childhood educator and receive their teaching license through that alternative route. As I said, there's quite a few people in our community right now working in pre-K who have obtained their license that way.
And each program has to have a certain number of licensed practitioners, right? To be.
They have to, each program has to have at least one licensed teacher.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, let me again thank you for preparing this and coming and sharing this information from us. And Mariah is going to be with us on a regular basis, and we just got the November reports today, so I think we've kind of got the nuts and bolts of a structure in place. Now we just have to remember to recognize Mariah before it's midnight.
I do want to just say, you know, if anyone has questions, has follow-up, please reach out to one of the three of us. Also, if you're interested in learning more about what these programs look like, if you want to, you know, do a virtual visit or, you know, any of these types of things, that we would be more than willing to help set that up. It's really quite inspiring to see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move down the agenda to the consent agenda, which today, fortunately, is very brief. I need a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting on November 4th, 2020.
So moved.
Thank you, Thomas. And could I have a second, please?
Seconded.
Thank you, Tim. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 20th, 2020. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please unmute and signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The minutes are approved. Communications, we did have a communication this week from the Burlington School Board, three representatives of the Burlington School Board who organized a founding meeting for a coalition to work toward getting the recommendations from the weighted study report that that the researchers at the University of Vermont and I think some private researchers as well put together for the legislature as part of, I can't remember the number of the law, but we'll find out about next week. And there were several school boards represented. There were superintendents and financial officers in attendance as well. And they did a little kickoff, and they have a resolution that they want school boards to continue. And since that was last night, it's not on our agenda for this week, but I wanted to let you all know about that communication. I'll be sending out the draft of the resolution and some information about the weighted study, what it means. And also I'll be talking with administration about Frank in particular about a presentation for next week where we'll take it up and consider that resolution and joining the coalition to implement the recommendations of the study on weighting of students. So that's our communications report, which brings us to administrative report. And I believe we're going to start with an update on the social justice anti-racist commitment, and hopefully hear from some of our teacher leaders if they're able to come this evening.
So we asked Michaela to rally the diversity teacher leaders to give an update. I can tell you, I've been seeing the emails and seeing some of the training, that there's a great amount of work taking place right now. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Michaela and our diversity teacher leaders who will really capture the great work that they're doing.
Thank you.
Good evening. I hope everyone's doing well. We're here just to offer a more informal report, check in about what we're doing. So big news is we were able to have a retreat in person, which was wonderful, and able to connect. And some of the teacher leaders will tell you more about that. I'm not going to take up a lot of time, just to say that it's really exciting work. I'm really happy to have this new infrastructure, and it seems to be making a big difference. There are a lot of faculty meetings happening, there's study groups happening, there's a lot of books being read, and a really great use of resources. So there are quite a few, I think at least 3 or 4 teacher leaders here that'll give you an update on their particular schools. And yeah, I guess that's it. And I'll call on who I can see now. So Eileen, do you want to get us started?
Sure. I'm with Academy School. I'm the librarian there. I'm a teacher leader along with Sarah Kaltenbaugh and Anna Casio. So we last spoke, when we last spoke, we had not had one of our staff meetings where we lead it. And so since then we've had 2, and we're starting with internal work. And so it's been really interesting because there's a range from, you know, why are we doing it this way? This is an urgent matter, to this isn't really part of my job. So, and somewhere in between. So it's been really interesting starting the conversations that are hard, and we're leaning into it at Academy. We really appreciated the training that we went to because, you know, at this point, my dedication probably exceeds, you know, my competency. I'm working on getting better at this. This is our first year. So the training was excellent, and it was good to meet with everybody else from the district and just kind of calibrate where we are and what other people are, and just be inspired as well. And so thanks again for that. And look forward to more district level events like that. That would be really good. So we're going to continue leading staff meetings once a month, and we anticipate a lot of success as we move towards the end of the first year, because we all really want our kids to be successful and we want them to thrive. Thanks.
Thank you, Eileen. Mike Sosak.
Yeah, I'm Mike Sostak, and I'm at the high school. And first, I want to echo the comment made about our offsite training. It was really great. It was the first time we really all had a chance to get together and interact. And I personally got a lot out of it. And we formed 4 different committees that each of us are participating in. And I think we'll be able to produce some real results with that. At the high school, we just formed our first BUHS Diversity and Equity Committee. And I was worried about how many people were going to actually be willing to be involved because of what's happening now and the burden on a lot of teachers. And I'm pleased to say we really actually had a large number of people interested in being involved. Right now we have 11 members, and that's both teachers and a few people from our other staff members. In our first meeting, we spent the time really talking about the commitment, and we went through each of the 8 points in our commitment and how and what role we might be able to play in those commitments at the high school. Our next step is really to meet with Steve and the school administration to really define better specifically what we can do to help our school. And I also want to add that our plan is, once we've got a better definition of exactly what we're going to do and be involved with, we plan to add to this committee, this 11-member committee, some parents and some students. And we already have some students that have expressed an interest in being involved. So I'm excited about what I think this committee could accomplish.
Thank you, Mike. Ellen Tumavikis. You're muted, Ellen.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I am the teacher leader along with Carrie Faye Horowitz at Putney Central School. And we are, we're doing some exciting work at Putney Central School. We've really grown our committee. It used a couple of years ago, I think we had 2 or 3 people on our committee for several years, and now it's grown into 9 people. And we have representation from, we have a para, we have 2 specialists, we have representation from the middle school, primary and elementary. So we have all across the board representation. And we've grown in numbers, but we've also grown in, I think, purpose and dedication. So we have a really committed committee, which is really, really wonderful. We've been holding our monthly staff meetings. Our September meeting was to examine the district commitment and go into breakout groups and really look at like how we make sure we all understand what it is, because there's so much in that commitment. And then sort of we started an ongoing dialogue of how we can make this best work in our setting. And this is an ongoing process. We had our October staff meeting, which was a discussion of, we did a summer reading. So we had about 6 books around anti-racism and racial justice and history that we all read over the summer. And we had a really, really robust, courageous conversation about a lot of topics where we had breakout groups based on the books, but then we came together and looked at the connections between the books that we read. And it was really, really helpful in pushing people to really look at their mindsets and their learned ideas and how to unlearn some things and how to best help kids. We're also, as a committee and as a staff, we've been having conversations about we've had the presence of a very large Black Lives Matter mural in front of our school all year. And it's been really an interesting, delicate process of like how best to address this that works for everybody and that honors everybody. And teachers have been doing a great job of talking about Black Lives Matter in the classrooms. And we just spent a big portion of our staff meeting today talking about a letter that we're writing as a staff to show gratitude towards the town for putting that mural in front of our school, because if without that we wouldn't have launched into the same momentum that we have because of its presence. So that's been really exciting. We as a committee, we just met with the Leadership Council to start connecting our work with parents and talking. We just spent our meeting today talking about how best to bring parents into our work. And we're just at the very beginning stages of organizing affinity groups. We have a lot of kids that are really interested, and we're working. We just started the initial planning for that. That's all we've got at Putney.
That's a lot. Thank you, Ellen. Kylie?
Hi, I'm Kylie. I'm the teacher leader for Oak Grove along with Tracy Bartlett. And we're doing a book study as a full staff that meets monthly. We're reading Stamped by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. And just discussing in small groups the historical context of our ideas about race. And we're also working with our committee, who has 7 members now, with our librarian Kate Haggerty on diversifying the school library.
Tim, you have a question, or are you gonna wait?
Oh, wait, thanks.
Okay. Shannon?
Hi, I'm Shannon, she, her pronouns, normally librarian, current 6th grade teacher. Tracy Benet Perrin, our school counselor, is a teacher leader along with me. Our school-based diversity equity committee just started this year. We have 10 members. And one thing we're really working on is our facilitation skills. So in staff meetings, we're teamed up with small groups of staff, and we're staying with that small group over the course of multiple meetings in order to like build some comfort and relationship between our small groups. And one thing that our committee is really proud of that I would like to share is a group of 6th graders came together on their own to start a group called the Rainbow Brigade. And with some help from me, Tracy, and Molly Savane, a 5th grade teacher. They planned, organized, and promoted a Black Lives Matter LGBTQI+ march in downtown Brattleboro in October. They got about 50 people there. They wrote and gave speeches and readings, and then marched to the Common to join like a women's event and to listen to the speakers there. Some of them were invited up on the stage to say some words. So it was just a really empowering youth organizers.
Thank you, Shannon. And Corey.
Hi, I'm Corey, and I'm the teacher leader along with Myra Arteaga at Guilford Central School. And some things that I wanted to mention about our school is that our DEC meetings, we've been doing some study and planning. It's a parent and staff committee. And one of the things that we see at our school is that these conversations about social justice are directly connected to our mission to promote outdoor learning and place-based education at our school. So part of what we're studying is making those connections. We've had a parent coffee chat that was very successful, where parents came and talked about, well, we had a conversation with parents and staff about how to talk to young kids about race and racism. And parents are asking, how can we extend these conversations? And so we've had a lending library as well at the public library in Guilford every Wednesday, where there's a read aloud posted onto our website as well for those who can't make it in person. And then kids can borrow books for free. And our music teacher has been interviewed by the Vermont AOE for his project, his music project, Dead White Guys Need Not Apply. And we are also in the beginning stages of social justice club at our school for kids who are interested in getting together. And we see that as sort of a beginning of an affinity group. And with our population at our school, beginning with a social justice club that is open to all.
Thank you, Corey. I want to just appreciate the community and all the people who support this effort. And I feel like, and I'm sure maybe some administrators can talk about this too, that it made a difference in having someone that represents these efforts in every building. Even though it's always happening, it's good just to have a touchstone that is there that you can see, that also serves kind of like as a pillar, but also as a resource for the community. So I want to thank all the teacher leaders and also the board and the community who supports all this work. And if there are questions, I'm sure people will be willing to answer them at this time.
Well, and thank you, Michaela, and all the teacher leaders. As you said, having structures in place makes a big difference. And just the volume, not even considering the amazing quality of the things that were just described, just the sheer volume is testimonial to how important it is to have structures and support people in when you want an initiative to go forward. So thank you. This is really, really wonderful. And Tim has patiently waited. So here's your chance, Tim.
No, this has been a great presentation. It sounds like you've had a wonderful retreat. My question is, did your discussions ever extend to the kinds of support that you can give to children with with physical needs, special physical needs?
I can answer that, and not at this time. I think that one of the main focuses of our first meeting together was really for us to become a group and us to see each other as supports. So we weren't really looking at specific instances in the school building at that time, but really looking to each other to see what resources we have among the group. But I can see that being something that we talk about down the road.
Good.
Can I
I hope
just
so.
chime in something there quickly, Michaela? I'm part of a subcommittee that's going to be gathering resources around different topics for use at upcoming professional developments and staff meetings. So one of many topics that we will be looking for resources around is ableism and also consideration for people with disabilities. Definitely as a talking point and topic and something for us to be considering in our instruction and representation.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. So the building-based diversity committee with teachers and our school nurse, when the teacher leaders are on that as well. So that's a big topic in our school. That's one of the many things that we're focusing on. It all kind of goes together. So yeah, we're definitely aware of that. And yeah, so it's an important thing at Academy.
Corey, did you wanted to say something?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Yeah, and for teacher leaders, if you have something to add, please feel free to jump in if it's timely. I mean, I'd love to see the blue hands, but I also don't want to miss any opportunities to share information. Emily.
So thank you, Michaela, and everyone for the wonderful presentation. Can you guys hear me? My mic is seeming to be low.
It's a little low.
Okay, I'll just take it up then. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Oh, we can see the sky too. Oh, thank you.
Not to bother her with the headphones, but it seems like it must be. So thank you so much. I love hearing every time from the teacher leaders. I'm a huge advocate of teacher leadership in the schools, so I love to see this expanding and hear from you folks who are doing such great work. I guess I wondered, hearing all the diversity of work and how many initiatives are going on at each school, I wonder what your thoughts are when you did come together for this larger retreat with figuring out what larger impact you're making all together, like so that you're moving. Michaela is obviously moving the district in a certain direction so that we can say, oh, wow, we've really had a measured impact on ABCD. Not having to do like assessments or something, but getting more than, people feel better about the things where we've done a lot of work, because we all know that everybody's kind of inundated with work. So is there anybody who can comment on that, or is that kind of future collaborations together you're going to start thinking about how you're moving the needle overall?
Emily, I want to jump in and give those folks a minute to think, because one of the things that I wrote down as the reports began was that we needed to find a way to keep track of the events and the actions and the initiatives and the meetings that are underway, so that we can actually look back and measure or report out qualitatively or quantitatively some of the things that are happening. And I don't want to put that on Michaela or the teacher leaders, so I'm going to see if we can't work something out with. Well, I'll talk to Andy about it, but hopefully we can find a way to use our minutes to record at least this part of it, the parts that are reported to us. And if we have reports every 6 to 8 weeks, then we'll have a pretty steady stream of anecdotes and information coming in.
That's
great.
And in addition to that, I would also say that one of the things that we did do at the retreat is really link our own individual goals to the overall district goals and the commitment to anti-racism and social justice in the district. And so one of the interesting things about this work that makes it really much more easy or facilitates our ability to engage with it is not thinking of it as another thing to do, but really thinking of it as an overall part of our mission as teachers, as educators, as people in the building. And so that piece is happening, and it serves as a way to coalesce all the work together. And I think that I'm thinking of, I think outcomes is something that I know that I'm sure Andy's going to talk next, that Andy wants to talk about. But I'm sure for sure it will lead to outcomes. So I'm gonna let him talk about how we're gonna measure that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Andy.
So I think, Emily, you really captured that this is the common parlance right now is really upstream versus downstream thinking. And this work is definitely what I would call upstream thinking. and that we're trying to address the issue or the challenges before they pop up. And, you heard it from Eileen, and what we have not, and what, I want to make sure we're doing a better job communicating with everyone. The reason why we're doing this work, and Eileen mentioned this, and I believe Eileen mentioned this in the retreat as well, and some of the feedback is, I'm not getting exact pedagogical skills around this. We're doing all this work, but I'm not getting teaching strategies. And really the strategy that we're getting out of this is, and the through line to student learning and student outcomes is, we are all going through this, the challenging, difficult, really self-reflective work so that we can create caring communities for students so that students can learn. And if we put this effort up front in our own self journey, then the outcomes become better because we're more empathetic students, we're more empathetic educators, we work with our students, we're more apt to create community, we're more open to reaching out to students with open hearts and open minds. And sometimes that's manifested in so many different ways. To look at what these things are, this could be a multi-year effort, but do we see higher graduation rates, higher engagement rates in school, better attendance rates? Those items we might be able to look at. But in general, like it's a kind of an ethic of just how do we treat children, and then what does this look like, and how does this manifest itself on a day-to-day basis, and then what do we see from kids in the end of the year? I can guarantee you that by doing this work and creating caring communities in the schools, we're going to see reductions in behavioral referrals. We're going to see improved graduation rates over time. We're going to see improved access to higher level learning for students, especially on the high school end as they progress through school. But it's a commitment and it's a multi-year commitment, and it all dovetails together. But it's not as easy as a downstream thing of, well, we see a child struggling with reading and now we're going to implement an intervention strategy. We can track that data. This is much more broad and a little more comprehensive.
Any other questions or responses or thoughts from the board? Okay, Corey, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to add about the retreat is that we did, I don't know if this was said already, but we did come up with subcommittees and subgroups, including a group to create a Google Drive of resources for staff meetings, a group on creating accountability buddies where we're checking in with each other as a committee, a group for a student group and curriculum plan, a group for working with families, and a group to work on our group principles. So I see that as because there are a lot of different initiatives going on, but that is a way for us to have a cohesive path going forward as a larger group. And so while those maybe aren't necessarily outcomes, those will lead, I believe, will lead to outcomes, especially in the curriculum plans and resources.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Well, again, thank you. This is terrific. And thanks for giving up your time and coming to the meeting and sharing this with us. It's really reassuring in these difficult times to see such great efforts on top of all the stuff you just have to do every day anyway. It's really impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the teacher leaders and Andy again. It's been great. And I feel so inspired by their dedication all the time. It's great. So thank you.
Thank you.
And
so that was the first part of the administrative report. Now to the rest of it.
Yeah.
Andy, you want to go ahead
Yeah,
with
I can tell you, Dave, that the teacher leaders definitely undersold what they're doing. Because they're doing a lot, and it is impressive to see what they're doing. So if I can share screen, I want to go through some attendance.
I think you can.
Let me go to this. Let me see if are you seeing my attendance piece now?
It says school board meeting.
Yep. All right. So I asked Paul Smith to pull out some attendance data in terms of where we are year to date. And let me go back to, so we, as you see, this is reflective of where we were this year at this point in time in comparison to last year. The The delta at the end is just the changes. So Academy, you can see, is pretty much right on where they were. This includes both remote and in-person students. Because of the way PowerSchool is set up, we really can't pull out that data to separate remote students specifically from the in-person students. But as you can see, across the board, in general, we're about 1% higher on average than we were, or 1% lower rather, than we were last year at this time. So the attendance, one of the fears that we had at the start of the year was that we're going to be missing kids, and we're not seeing that so much in terms of the attendance requirements for where kids are. We'll get to engagement in a second about some of the worries that might be there.
Andy, could you go back just for a second? Because I didn't understand those numbers. There was this year, last year, this year, last year, this year. What do those numbers mean?
So this is the average daily membership. So it takes an average over the year to date in schools. And so that's when you see a decimal point at the end, sometimes it's reflective of some changing numbers in school population.
Yeah, no, I meant there are two numbers for last year and two numbers for this year. What are they?
So the percentages?
No, the first two columns.
Yeah.
Just start with Academy, 335 and 323. That looks like there's a difference of 12 students. And then there's another last year that says 319. So what is the 335? Why are there two numbers for that?
I would ask Paul pull this data out for me. I think they were the two.
It doesn't, never mind, go. I don't want to, it just seemed like it didn't make sense. So it's not helpful if I can't make sense of it.
So in general, the numbers that we pulled, you can see graphically where attendance is. This year, this is based on total numbers, gives you a sense of where things are. I have to move my screen a little bit here so I can see the total. So this is the daily attendance, and then the other slide coming up gets to total enrollments. So the enrollment part isn't as much of a concern this year because we do have that ADM protection built in through the legislature. And one of the worries that we did have was that we were going to see a drop off with families pulling out to homeschool. We really haven't seen that as much as we thought was going to happen. So in terms of attendance, we're looking like we're looking pretty good right now. Some of the challenges that we're seeing with engagement, with students, while attendance is generally pretty good, the issues that do come up around engagement do stem from there are pockets of kids that are failing to attend school. Those students are going through their school counselors, and some were even involved in their school's ed support teams to problem solve and brainstorm to see what can be done. Some of the issues around engagement as well might be limited connection or limited connected time with the classes. And so the standard between attendance and engagement is different. The standard for attendance is there some contact with the child in the scope of in the course of the school day, or some indication that the child has tried to do something in the course of the day. That really doesn't equate to engagement. So there are times where a child could technically be in attendance but not doing the work. There are issues with some incomplete or missing work across the board, and as well as certain smaller cases where no one's responding to requests for contact. When there are no requests for contact, that's when you see home visits, groups going out to check on the students, and wellness checks. So the schools have developed a prioritization plan for bringing students back into school for additional days. The elementary group has a protocol that they've looked at. BAMS has been will start bringing in up to 10 students per team for additional time after Thanksgiving. And those will be, so for the Monday and Tuesday kids that are in person, they'll have another cohort of 10 that come in on Thursday and Friday. BUHS has been scheduling also students in for additional days. And so the schools have developed these spaces to bring students in to access the internet, especially if it's connectivity that's a challenge. The larger part around connectivity, I know that the PPEC continues to look at, and we're continuing to identify what those broader challenges are around access to internet, and it's pocketed without a doubt. The other piece of the admin report is that we held conferences.
Well, Andy, before you shift off, I want to, on the engagement part,
Yeah.
what's the scale of the proportion of students that are not fully engaged at elementary and the high school level? I mean, what percentages are we talking about?
I can tell you in my conversations with Keith and Tom at the middle school, for instance, they're bringing back 10 students per team. The teams have anywhere between 65 and 75 students per team for in-person instruction. And they can bring back 10 by their criteria. That's failing 2 or more classes. And so those are struggling kids that might be disengaged or struggling students. So it's a healthy number of students. For the I don't have a true sense of the scope in terms of the elementary grades because there's so much contact with the parents. The high school, it's a little larger that they are worried about the, in terms of hearing anecdotally where they're worried about some of the failures. It's a little higher this year than it was in previous years.
Is it on the remote days that with high school kids, they're only in the building one day during the week, right? So it's primarily during the remote days that they're not coming, or that's an issue?
Yeah, but our conversations generally is it's the remote time. It's taking students one of the hard parts with the pandemic is that school needs to be such a consistent thing in students' lives that when we remove that level of this is just the 5-day routine because now we're constrained by space limitations and we're impacted by bandwidth limitations and we're impacted by the physical distancing aspect that schools become. Some of that consistency is removed. So I know that the high school group, for instance, has been really working on reaching out to kids. I know that different administrators have done some outreach directly to families and students to pull them on in. I don't have a sense of how large the number is, although we have talked about some of the impact that this will take on credit recovery classes, for instance, in the future. That we may have to schedule more credit recovery courses for students in future years.
I've had some questions and conversations about this with people, particularly around the high school, in terms of implementing trying to implement a full schedule and get the kids all their credits under this model, which seems like it means a lot of screen time if they're not in the building 4 out of the 5 days. And we haven't really heard anything about how how is that happening in the high school, and then what's the impact? What's the success rate, or is it being effective?
So it's the balancing part is difficult. So they've moved to more synchronous instructional time as opposed to the asynchronous. I think in talking with Steve the other day, I do know that they brought back, just seeing a note from him that they had brought back 28 students to do more in-person time. One of the learnings that they had last year is that they had structured so much asynchronous time that it pulled away some of the typical structure in a student's day or their schedule to their day. And we've talked today as a group about making sure if we had to go to emergency remote again, that there is a set schedule for students. So the yin and the yang of the current setup is that by bringing students in 1 day per week, they only have 1 day of asynchronous learning, whereas the other days where they're present, they're doing actually kind of live synchronous instruction. So they're, by bringing students back for 2 days a week would then shuffle kids into more days a week of asynchronous instruction, it's a tough balance that they're trying to address.
And I've got a couple of questions, but I just want to ask one more thing. So the students on not Wednesday's different, but on the 3 remote days, are they doing 4 blocks like they would on a normal school day on screen or online during those 3 days?
They're engaging with their teacher on this time. That's my understanding. In terms of kids coming in for additional access, they're also averaging 4 to, for kids that don't have that access, they're getting 4 to 6 kids or so a day coming in to use the internet in the building while school's in session.
And they're on the internet pretty much all day.
Yeah.
Ouch. I got a couple of questions, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm hearing this conversation and it sounds like we are maybe able to identify like the most at risk that needs support, but I'm gotten so much feedback and have been anticipating that there would be requests back to families and students about feedback for how their remote days are going. I know specifically the high school, and I just want to clarify to the whole board in case you didn't quite catch that the high school days are basically 7 hours of Zoom meetings on their remote days. They get a 5-minute break between 2 classes in the morning and they get a 30-minute lunch. Nobody's handing them a lunch to eat where they get a break. They have to go and prepare it and do all of that. And I know that our educators are super strapped. They're burnt out and it feels so unhealthy to have this scenario. It seems like we're setting our kids up, honestly, to be disengaged, asking anyone to sit for 7 hours without really any breaks. It just seems like a lot. And I think that that's something that we should be actively reaching out and getting feedback to see if it's working. Because I'm also, I'm obviously the most at risk. I'm glad to hear that we are finding those kids and opening the doors for them, but we have an entire population of kids, high achieving all the way down, that are pretty miserable with the way it's going. And I think our teachers are feeling really impacted too. So I just want to put that out there and talk about that need to maybe assess, especially if we're not just going to be opening doors, but talk about that need to be willing to amend how we've been doing things. And just really imagine if it's effective. It's, as a parent of a high schooler, it makes me very upset. It's my child is getting depressed, sun up to sundown, sitting at a computer, hating school. And I just worry about that. And I worry about the kids who aren't in comfortable environments, who don't have a comfortable space to work in, and how vulnerable it makes them to be in a scenario where they have to sit, especially where there's been a really strong push to like, your screen has to be on. It's really, we're asking kids to be very vulnerable in that scenario too. So yeah, I just want to put that out there since this came up, because I think it's really important. And I kept thinking that, I think I misunderstood at the last meeting. I thought I caught that we were reaching out to families to get some feedback on how their remote days were going. I think that was just for the remote families, but I think that we're really missing the mark if we don't start moving. I'm afraid that we just keep looking at the next goal and aren't willing to like work on what we have. And especially if something happens with this pandemic and we stay in this model, but we need to do it as best as we can.
I can say, I know that we meet weekly with the team, and I know that Steve and the high school leadership team is meeting with the teachers regularly to say, what can we do better? Certainly this is feedback that I'm sure they'll take to say, what are we doing to assess, how are we doing? And it comes up consistently, and trying to thread the needle with the changing guidance that we receive. I can tell you when the last Strong and Healthy Start document came out that was implemented effectively this week, what we were hoping for was a reduction in the spacing requirements, or if there's any leeway with that. And obviously we're not going to have that with the surge in cases. And that was, a good decision that didn't come. But I know that they continue to look at how can we have more students in the building more frequently, and create that opportunity for kids to be here and be most effective.
Right. So in person is most effective, there's no doubt, but we need to make sure that the not in person days, those remote days, can be as effective as possible too. And I guess that's really what I'm thinking about. I think it seems like asynchronous learning. I know in the spring it was very disorganized. Part of the lack of structure was that classes were overlapping. There wasn't you weren't caught in your schedule time. You might not have access to your teacher for several days. And it turned into, well, we're going to be as strict and as, tight as possible with how we make this a routine. It doesn't feel healthy or sustainable or beneficial to our kids or our educators. I don't know. I also, like, I have dug for information, and I can't find anything that supports this model of 7 hours of Zoom time, like on a bell schedule. It seems like the National Teachers Association stands on a maximum of 3.5-hour days. We know that home learning isn't the same as in-person learning. And I just think that we need to be flexible and I'm glad I have this opportunity to speak up and say this because I think it's just something that needs to be on the radar of your radar and all of the board to be in tune with it too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Liz?
So in the K through 8, they have an hour and a half in the middle of the day as a break. So I'm wondering if at the high school level, from what Michelle is saying, could they like cut each class by like 5 minutes and give the kids a bigger break in the middle of the day? Something along those lines so they can get up and move around and do whatever, but just to have a nice solid break in the middle of the day like the other kids have to regroup. I don't know if that's something that could be done, but it's certainly occurring in the fully remote classes, at BAMS and the elementary school level.
I think Steve is here. Steve, do you want to chime in on that?
Sure, thanks. I hope everybody can hear me. So, I think there's some, not misinformation, but some confusion about how we're structuring our classes. So last spring, several of us went to a developmental designs course, and part of developmental designs talks about how you take an instructional period of time like a block, and how do you structure that to take advantage of students' attention spans and also teacher attention span. And so what we're asking our teachers to do is to consider that you have at the beginning of a block of 80 minutes, you have what's called a goal time, where you have great attention and students can engage in something like a lecture or a presentation. That's followed by a refractory period where students can't necessarily continue to pay attention to a single point of instruction. And so what we ask our teachers to do and what they're doing is they're changing that instruction. So instead of lecturing for the entire 80 minutes, they're doing things like telling kids to maybe work in a breakout group. If it's a language class, maybe they go into breakout groups and they practice pronunciation. Maybe they work on developing a story. Maybe they talk about something in their English class. I know in our biology curriculum, which I'm excited to have them share, they actually go outside. And then at the end of that block, you come back together for some closure. So I hope it's not a case, and I know that different teachers have different levels of comfort with this. I hope it's not a case where we are doing stand and deliver for 80 minutes and then doing a break. So, I do think our teachers are working hard to, number one, build community, because that's one of the things that we identified that we needed to do a much better job was when we started the year to make sure we're building a community, explicitly and deliberately. And we're trying to model that in all of our classes. And I also think we're trying really hard to gather feedback from teachers and from students. Matter of fact, today, because today's a half day for instruction, I met with 9th and 10th graders, and I met with 11th and 12th graders. And we talked about a whole host of concerns that they had. Some of those being the uncertainty about what's our schedule going to look like. We talked about, possibly changing the remote day, what it might look like. We talked about the differences that we wanted to see from last year's kind of chaotic time to this year where we have a more structured time. The students today were fantastic, and they gave a lot of great feedback, and we're going to continue to work with that feedback. So, the idea that we're not listening is false. We are listening to kids, we are listening to teachers, and we are now 1/4 of the way through the year, and we're going to continue to kind of tweak things and modify things as we go along. I'd love to answer questions.
Tim.
Yeah, I wonder, Steve, if you're familiar with Florida virtual schools. Long before COVID, they've been educating tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of their students virtually and in hybrid form. You're familiar with it, yeah.
I am. Yep.
And it
And you know,
works.
we're using some of their best practices. The difference with the Florida virtual program is they are primarily asynchronous.
Right. Yeah, and what's curious about that is most students start their classes at night because they're working during the day.
Right, and we actually, you know, one of the strong feedback points we got last year from parents was that they wanted to have a schedule. They wanted to know when their students were assigned to classes because, you know, our teachers were working on Saturdays, they're working on Sundays, they're working late at night, and you know, we really needed to kind of to preserve the teacher's day and also to give everybody a structure. We did go with, you know, classes starting and ending at a certain time. But that starting at any time doesn't necessarily, I hope, mean that everybody is saying, I'm going to do, you know, stand and deliver for 80 minutes. You know, we want to have, as you're pointing out, we want to tap into different methods of learning. We want to tap into different learning styles through that 80 minutes.
Thanks.
Yep.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that, and I was familiar with it. It still comes back to the fact that whether our kids are getting to do little breakout groups with their classmates, they're still spending the entire day staring at a computer in a small space, sitting, not moving, with not really any wiggle room. And I just, like, I'm seriously concerned about not, you know, just about their emotional well-being, their mental health, their physical health. It doesn't feel safe for my child. And I'm getting this feedback from so many other places. It's, you know, I'm seeing, it's just, it's not really supported. I want to reach out to some pediatrician friends because I wish I had that in my back pocket right now to bring up, but it seems pretty clear that we know that we need movement. In a regular school day, there is some movement, there's a change of scenery. And so I am very concerned, and I'm not really sure how we're justifying this synchronous approach on these remote days. I mean, I feel like especially we saw a lot of kids succeed in the spring, and it feels like asynchronous learning is something that is a life skill they need to have. And kids that aren't maybe able to self-direct themselves and kind of self-navigate, those kids would be easier to identify and support in a, you know, one-to-one setting or whatever. And then the kids that can self-navigate will have more flexibility. So I guess like what's up with that? Like, why are we so stuck on the synchronous long school day when I think it was, you know, as a school day to count as a school day is, you know, 4 hours or something like that.
Right. And I agree with you that building in that movement time is important. And I think some teachers, are doing that. You know, some teachers are telling kids, you know, go outside, walk your dog, come back in 20 minutes, like in the middle of the block. And that's, you know, that's stuff that I really like to hear about. You know, but I think, you know, again, you know, we go back to, you know, last year, and I think to go completely asynchronous, I don't think it's developmentally appropriate for all of our kids. You know, our virtual high school classes, they are asynchronous. You know, the ones that we contract with virtual high school out of Maynard, Mass for. And, you know, in some cases, students really have trouble handling an asynchronous environment. And, you know, there are also times, like, for example, in environmental science and policy classes, those students are doing asynchronous work in a manner because they're getting a project to do, they're giving benchmarks, they check in with the teachers. And I think with our older students, I think it's an easier thing to do. But again, you know, I don't want to think that we've presented our learning model for this year is a static model. You know, I mean, last week we brought back ACE period, you know, so I mean, we are addressing those things, but, you know, we can't go in after 5 weeks and change, but, you know, we're now 13 weeks in, and now it is time to look at that. And it's time to look at the remote model and see what we do differently. But, you know, and that's one thing that we talked about with the students, and, you know, some of them today were like, we're going to change the schedule. And I was like, we might change it to see if we can make it better. So, and I'd love to talk to you, and I'd love to have people call me and give me specific concerns about that. That'd be really helpful to get that feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Emily?
My question was just to clarify. So at the high school level, is it the case that there's 5 blocks a day when kids are online of 80 minutes? I just didn't know exactly what the structure was, like how many classes are kids actually attending each day?
They attend 4 blocks a day,
And each one's 80 minutes.
approximately 80 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Tara, thank you for your patience.
Not a problem. One of the things I just wanted to bring up in listening to this conversation is I have a real concern as we move forward into, possibly opening things back up, is the numbers are on the rise. I know in Putney, our teachers are working very, very hard. We do not have substitute teachers if we need them. We have multiple specials classes that are not happening because teachers are remote. And our teachers are not getting a break. And there's a lot of students not being engaged on their remote days via, I have one kid who hates Zoom, and we do the packet. And I have another child who loves the Zoom classes. And unfortunately, I'm in a position where I'm having to look at the numbers that are on the rise. The fact that one of my kids has not had a certified teacher in a classroom for the last 3 weeks. And trying to figure out what's happening next and how the expectation is that we're bringing kids back into the classroom and a safety of both the teachers. We're working so hard in Putney at teaching both remote and in-person days, how that looks moving forward, and what's the plan to cover all of that, because I've been asking and I'm getting we're handling it, a Band-Aid to me, and it doesn't feel good as a parent watching what's going on in Putney.
Other questions from the board, other comments? I think what I'm hearing is that we're getting some responses, we're getting some information, user feedback, or no, not user, yeah, user feedback. But it sounds like we're not being not very scientific about it, and not very data conscious about it. I think I think what I'm hearing is that we need to have some really accurate numbers, I guess at all levels, but particularly in the high school, on the number of students that are engaged on remote days, and not just physically there, but getting the work done too. I mean, Andy said that, he mentioned the students that are being called back in and some of the interventions, but I think the board would like to have some really accurate information on that, some really clear data. The other thing I think we're hearing is that parents, we need to hear back from parents. We need to have some sort of a survey done, a satisfaction survey. I'm not sure exactly what, and if you want me to help design it, I'd be happy to, but basically we want to know how people are, how they see it working, how satisfied are they, and what suggestions do they have. And then the same with students. Now, I mean, I understand that you were able to talk to some students, Steve, but we have a lot of students, and a lot of those voices I suspect haven't been heard. So I think we're going to want to look at a student survey. And I'm not sure what maybe at the end of the semester is the best time before you do the schedule changing, but something a little bit more comprehensive and that's going to give us many more voices and a much broader data set for you to make these decisions and to make these changes. So those are the 3 things that I took from this conversation. So now I got a bunch of hands up. So Jackie?
Well, I just wanted to reiterate the request for parent feedback, especially to send your comments and concerns to Steve, because I have heard from parents of kids that are not doing great with the synchronous learning and the all-day Zoom classes, but there are also students who are doing very well with that. And obviously it's not a one size fits all. Some things will work for some kids and not for others, but the folks for whom it is working very well, and in some cases better than in-person learning, I just would encourage you to contact Steve directly as well with your experiences.
Thanks, Jackie. Liz?
Yeah, I just want to amplify and see if we can get a better answer to what Tara brought up. We don't have a third grade teacher. She's out until after the beginning of the year, I believe. So that class is being taught by paras. Today, our phys ed teacher taught that class. So I guess to address parent concerns for that third grade, did Amy leave lesson plans so that everybody who's filling in for her has something to work with?
I can address that.
Oh, her, great.
Yeah, so here's the deal. Amy, under the advice of her physician, has been told to take a break. And that means cut the ties with school for the time being. She'll be back. That means no lesson planning. Matt was not there today, but he will be there tomorrow. Today was Wednesday. Excuse me, Matt will be there tomorrow. My mistake. And we've just had an unfortunate series of incidents. I've had 5 or 6 people out out of the abundance of caution circumstances, I guess I'd call it. Every day this week, there's a real dearth of subs. Nobody understandably wants to come into school. So we're doing what we can to make it work. Is it perfect? No. It is absolutely not, but we are doing the best that we can. I've advertised for a third grade teacher. The intent was to start at the beginning of the second semester. That's been posted for about a week. I have one applicant who may or may not fit the bill. So, that's kind of where we're at. And I do want to remind people, as I do from time to time, that this is a global pandemic. People are exceptionally anxious and nervous about coming into school settings to teach kids that they don't know and haven't been affiliated with since the start of the school year. So yeah, it's tough, and we are doing the best that we can.
Thank you, Herb. It's really important. It's important to remember that, and to remember too that we're in what used to be the safest state or the lowest infection rate. We're now red like everybody else, but we're also in one of the healthiest, the safest counties and a very safe school district. But we're going to have more of these kinds of situations coming up, and I'm not sure it's helpful to talk about each individual situation like this, because we're doing a lot of coping and a lot of compensating, and no one is in an ideal situation. So I think it's best to not really not focus on one situation, Liz.
Okay, David, I just wondered, our teacher who usually teaches third grade is teaching fourth grade. And I don't know if Jen has old lesson plans somebody could use, because that might really help. That was just an idea that popped into my head. I don't know if Jen kept any.
So rather than take everyone's time with these individual conversations that are specific to individual teachers, it's probably best just to understand that we are strategizing. I've worked with a couple of people from the central office, including Andy and Deb, Brian, and Lily, to try to come up with some sort of a cohesive plan that makes sense for everybody involved. But so we're leaving no stone unturned.
I didn't think so, but I've heard from a lot of parents, so I just wanted to get that out there.
And if we could just remember that some of this does involve confidential and privileged information. We need to be mindful about what we're sharing and what we're requesting to know.
I think it's also important to remember that everybody in this system is working extensive hours and doing way more than has normally been expected of them. There are people that had 2 or 3 duties that now have a dozen. There are especially in the elementaries, the specials are really doing amazing work. Our nurses, everybody is overworked, overstressed, and absolutely doing the best they can. And any indication, I know that Liz wasn't trying to say that they weren't, and I don't think that there's anybody on the board or anybody in this room that would say that.
No,
we're clearly getting everything we can, and we're doing the best we can. I think what the board is asking for at this point is to engage more with the students and with the parents to get some feedback, particularly on the high school model, because it will inform and improve whatever the changes are. I think that's the message here. Michelle.
I was basically going to just reiterate what you just said. One of the things that the Communication Council wanted to do is create actually an anonymous way for people to submit feedback. I mean, for forever, not just around this or pandemic issues. People, it's difficult to complain. It's difficult to tell people that are working hard and to express complaints and concerns. And I think that it's intimidating. And I think it's also a certain people that think to themselves that that's an option, that I could go straight to. I can go to the principal, I can go to the superintendent. And I do think, that we need to get as much feedback as possible and make it as inclusive as possible by reaching out to everyone and giving people an avenue without, feeling like it's their family complaining about their way teachers are doing their job. Because I think everyone's really supportive and understanding and trying to be patient. So that's it.
Thank you. Beth Bristol.
Thanks, David. Beth Bristol from Guilford. I want to start out by saying I'm encouraged to hear this conversation happening at the board level. I think it's important, and perhaps I've been thinking it should be addressed more maybe than it has been. But specifically, I wanted to recall last board meeting when Andy was speaking about the decision of whether to keep schools open in the context of these rising cases and surrounding schools closing. And I recall him saying that he was interested in the board's perspective on that. And then I don't remember there being a follow-up discussion from the board getting their perspective and their input. And I was wondering if we could hear from the board on that now.
And what question, Beth, specifically whether to stay open after Thanksgiving?
Yeah, exactly. I think Andy was addressing the fact that right now the administration was opting to keep the schools open through the holidays. But I remember him saying that he was interested in getting the board's perspective on that, but then I don't remember hearing an answer.
It's funny, I'm chuckling because Andy and I had a long conversation. I don't remember exactly when it was, a week or two ago, or maybe a little bit more, about this thing. And gee, what should we do? And if people go away, or people that don't even know that they're not supposed to go away, and they don't report back, and would it be safe? What would be the best thing? And then, I think we talked about it on a Friday, and on the Monday or Sunday, even the Agency of Education came out and said what was going to happen. So it's sort of interesting that it's come back around again. I'm happy if board members want to say what they think about that specific question. You're certainly welcome to do that. I just want to point out that it's Andy's responsibility to make that determination based on consultation with the Agency of Education and the Health Department. And but if people want to weigh in either now publicly or send Andy a note about what they think, that would, that's fine with me. I'm not seeing any hands come up, Beth, so I think we're gonna.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to move on to Frank, David, so we can give Frank a?
I think, yeah, that's a really good idea since it's almost 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't see, we don't have, well, we do have one more hand up, but let's, well, Tara, is it brief?
I'll be brief. I know everyone's working very hard, and I see it and I feel it myself as well in my work life. I would like to just say, I agree with Beth. We need to evaluate whether or not it's equitable at this point in time with so many outages in Putney and in other schools possibly to be having in-person classes. And we really need to start thinking about the safety of our teachers and our students and really have that conversation and look at what the community is actually asking for. So maybe a survey is needed, and it's needed fast to ask those questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, I'll be the board member that real fast chimes in.
Okay, great.
And I would just, I have 4 kids in our schools that go all the way from, little to big. And I fully respect that my superintendent of the school district can analyze the information and data and make a wise choice for our schools. I have a lot of confidence in that. I've been listening and watching him look at everything. And I think it's hard because when you're in the community, we have a lot of concerns and we don't have a lot of answers, and we're not privileged to as much information. And, it's easy to let your mind go. But seeing how thorough our superintendent and his teams have been in assessing this, I just have full confidence that he's capable of making the right decision, and that he wants our kids to be safe and our staff to be safe, and that he's troubleshooting and looking ahead at what could happen. And so I'm comfortable with the decisions he makes. And I just want to say that.
Thanks, Michelle. Jackie, and then I'm going to ask that we go on to the fiscal report.
Yeah, I'll be brief as well. It's certainly not as if I don't have my own opinions about what might be the right decision for my own family, but that doesn't have any place in a board decision. And Andy is the person who has the more direct contact with our administrators, who are very helpful in making those decisions. I would not want to act outside of my purview and try to advise him. I don't think that that's appropriate for me as a board member. And I echo Michelle in having the confidence in Andy and also our administrators to make the right decision. So that's what I wanted to say there.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, Frank. Do you have any? I'm not sure what we're gonna, what you're going to share with us today.
Okay, I did have Barb post a couple of documents to the board agenda website. There are several other resources there. So if you wanted to click on a couple of documents I was going to share, they are there for your review. So we had 2 topics. One was the status of our CARES Act funding. And then the other is this continuation that we've been focusing on the road ahead for budget development is coming right up, so I can continue on giving you overview of the financial statements and hopefully help you navigate the information that you'll be dealing with pretty soon.
It's been a little while, so I hope we can everybody can shift back into the gears. But I just want to remind people that once we start looking at the budget, all of this will be real, and it will come back. It'll all make a lot of sense.
Good. Yeah, and I am trying to share resources that are easy to refer back to, that give you both summary and detailed information. So hopefully,
great,
that works. So I wanted to share with you where we're at in the CARES Act funding. Here's the various categories that have been split out by the legislature for a variety of different criteria for which the school district has been applying for funds. So as we have the same theme that has been discussed all evening, we've got a lot of folks doing a tremendous amount of work to pursue these funds to support our kids and our staff in our community. So in total, these are budget numbers, and I do expect they're a little high because the word that I'm getting from the Agency of Ed is that, you should ask for whatever you think might come your way, because you can't amend and ask for a greater amount. So it's unlikely we'll receive 2.6 million. But we're shooting for the stars here, and this is what we're asking for right now. We have current applications. The largest one, I can give you a little bit more detail, but let me just give you the quick update. It's probably familiar because we've talked about these different areas of support in the previous meetings. The indoor air quality is much more specific. The two large projects are unit ventilators in Academy and in Guilford, and then that's more than half of the resources, and then the rest of it we can talk about if there's interest. This is recently distributed funding for the Career Center for Technology. Nancy Weiss is working on that grant. This 111,000, we're very pleased to get the grant award today. This is for the various equipment items in child nutrition, including a van for the Putney Central School, so that folks don't have to use their personal vehicles for the remote food delivery. And by the way, that $111,000, all of the items in that grant have been approved. So it's a matter of racing the clock to make sure we can buy all of this stuff, meet all the federal requirements for procurement before December 30th, because all of these funds, they're not available after December 30th. Over the summer, we completed this program. You heard about this. We fed a lot of folks in the community over the summer that were in addition to our students, and so on. So I won't go too deep into that, but maybe one quick reference to the one I glossed over, the big one, the 1.6 million. Here's the general, they call Corona Relief Act funding for the LEAs, the school districts. It's broken out into a timeline. We absolutely have purchased this 118,000, closed the books, is a prior year. These funds here, July and August, were the planning funds to get school operations moving. And then here's where we are now, the 1.2 million for a variety of services and equipment. I do have a lot of detail here. I won't go through all the details, but just to help you glance through this current data is it's broken out into various components of whether it's salaries. There's a lot of unemployment claims that came through, so that's why it's a little unusual to see so much in benefits versus salary. But the vast majority of what we see going forward, and this has nothing to do with the indoor air quality grant. This would be a lot of Chromebooks, a lot of software subscriptions to facilitate learning, and then some other coordination and building cleaning and maintenance services. There's a lot of fogging and fogging kind of devices and so on here, and the plexiglass and all kinds of things in the 700,000. So as I say, I think these are kind of high numbers. The 1.6 million. I hope that we can acquire all of these items. There are still a fair amount of items in this. This is a budget. It's not an actual fair amount of number of items that have not been identified. So we'll be refining that in the next few days. And as I said, we need to get procurement going in the next few days, next couple of weeks, so that we assure that the items are delivered by December 30th. If they're not funded. So that's kind of an overview of where we're at in our CARES Act funding requests and the hard work to secure the money. Any questions on that before I go over to our other topic?
That's really helpful, because I was wondering, there's some things that we, like the 1%, education that was specifically for COVID. Otherwise, it would have been used in other areas. So I was kind of wondering, what will we get money back into that account? Can we spend that money again? But I think the way you've laid it out, we're basically getting reimbursed for what we spent. And so we're not going to have any major surpluses when this is all said and done. We're not going to get like.
Yeah, these are all for unbudgeted money, and it's through December 30th. I didn't speak to this ESSER money. There's actually, this is only the component of the ESSER money that's within that period. But David, to your point, there will be additional relief acts funding under this ESSER grant that I think will continue to fund some of our operating expenses that were unbudgeted, and may create a resource, a local resource for us, only because we can't do everything, as you know, everyone knows. So some of the locally planned things won't be done. That will create some local money surplus, because we will be procuring training and supplies and equipment based on this urgent need. So I think there will be some favorable financial effect, but it's too early to tell. Okay, the other item I wanted to share with you is getting back into the very interesting topic of financial statements and the language that we use. So here's another resource for you. It's on the Agency of Education's website, and Barb has put it right into your board agenda for this meeting. So you could click on this and you get this PDF. This document, I think, will help kind of tie a lot of our conversations together for you as a reference document. It is pretty lengthy. It's a couple hundred pages. But let's just take a glance at the table of contents, and then we're due for the discussion on the what's called the object segment of the account number. We've talked about fund, we've talked about grade level, we've talked a little bit about program, and we talked about function. And so the object code is where there's a whole lot of detail in many of the things that have come up tonight in this conversation. If you understand these references and the way information's captured, you'll be able to find, connect like pre-K education spending. And you heard about, payments to the private providers. Well, you'll see how quickly you can find that information in financial statements if you understand the framework that we're required to use. So that's hopefully how we'll keep it interesting. And I will try to be brief, but certainly happy to answer any questions, and know that we'll follow up. So here's the table of contents, just a couple of quick sort of points of reference for you. In the document, whoops, here, I didn't need to go that fast. There we go, back into the table here. I do think you will find the introductory part of this document useful. Geez, sorry, there is a lot to it. Here we go, back to the beginning. It just gives you sort of the context of financial reports. Where does the board fit in? Where does the annual report fit in? Where does the community fit in? Why does it matter? So that's the introduction of this document. Here's the section you can see under here, school boards. Why would you be interested in this information? And now I know most of that is obvious to you because you're in that position. And then there's a section on budgeting and as I say, all about the way we organize information and summarize it. Here's again, documents that I've presented is shared with the board, and many of you that have been on boards would recognize these references. This is also a useful section that gives you a good sense of what should be in a financial report. And there's a reference to, of course, the audit and who says, you know, what is relevant in an audit report. So that's all in here, all part of the Governmental Accounting Standards Boards that sets up these rules. Next section is on reporting. There's a tremendous amount of reporting, and that's why you got to have an accounting system so that you can be transparent and accountable for the millions of dollars that we spend. So here, you know, you might glance through here and see, again, we're constantly accessing data to respond to our stakeholders, our regulators, our oversight agencies, our funding partners, and most importantly, our public, so that we, you know, we can again be transparent and accountable for the resources that we use. I've mentioned a little bit about the origins of this whole statewide system, so that's right here as well in this section. And what we're going to talk about, we'll jump into the object level of the account code here, and where you'll find more definitions, more narrative around why we record information the way we do it. So I will jump to the more detailed section of this, spend just a little bit of time on some of these definitions. You see here, object description, page 91. As I say, we've already talked about fund, we've talked about function, we've talked about grade level. We're getting to the largest area of the financial statement, the most detail, the object code. So here we go. I'll zip down there to page 91. And here we are. So when you're reading a financial statement and you're not sure what you're looking at, this document gives you the definitions. Quickly, an overview, the 100s are the salaries, the 200s are benefits, the 300s are professional services, the 400s are professional services that are not directly related to educational purposes, things like advertising and insurance and so on. The 600s, I'll just get the system catch up. The 600s are supplies. There we go, 600 supplies. This document, it's not consistent in telling you all of the codes for whatever reason, where I think the state has a lot of interest in a particular category. They add the detail right here. So, you know, for example, in supplies, the state's quite interested in energy, which is a good thing, and we capture things. So they elaborate on the detail behind the supply account. They elaborate on, hey, you got to use 627 for wood chips and use 624 for oil. So this is again where, you know, Sean, I know, has referred to this in the warrants, in a budget discussion. You know, if somebody wants to know how much does the whole system spend on wood chips, well, you know, we can look that up very quickly among all schools, or just at the elementary level, or just at the high school level. And of course, more importantly, it would be, you know, we can look at after school programs, we can look at, you know, the English budget, we can look at any one of these areas that are defined by the accounting code. So just to finish up on the object level, you know, we've talked about 1 through 6, 700s are equipment. Important to recognize that with the equipment, the state several years ago has asked us to capitalize fixed assets, which means we don't charge anything to an equipment account unless it's more than $5,000 and it's a capital asset, which then we depreciate and then we have a good sense of what's the useful life of our major assets. That's all part of our capital plan. So you will see a lot of like computers charged to the 600 series, the supply category, and it's specifically the 651 code. And then we have the 800s are debt service, and then the 900s are a lot of not common codes, but important codes, things like transfers to other funds, and so on. So in addition to just code definitions, I went through that pretty quickly, but going back to the table of contents here, this is intended to be a good overview of so many aspects of the regulatory requirements of a school board related to fiduciary oversight, and then communication with the professional audits, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, the State Board of Education, the Agency of Education, and as I said, most importantly, the way we communicate financial information to our general public. So it's actually not a completely comprehensive document. There's a whole lot of things we do here that are not in here, but for a good foundation, I think you will find this a good reference document. Not that you're just going to pick it up and read it, but as we get into financial reporting, I think you'll find going back to that is helpful. One last thing I thought I would do is just glance again at our financial statement. So see if I can find it. I think it might be over here. So we worked with this document. This document is the more detailed version of what I just shared with you. This document is also on the website. All of these I put under the board agenda, but you can also go to the central office finance and then go scroll down in the finance portion of the website. And you don't have to kind of remember what meeting date did we present this. It's always there in one place for you. So again, this is the code that you look at when you look at a financial statement. And here's that object. And then when you come over here to this tab at the bottom, it's even more detailed than what I just shared with you. This is where, I said salaries are 100s. Well, a 111 is the teacher, right? And a 112 is academic support, and a 121 are our paraeducators. And I'm working with Andy and the principals right now very carefully about looking at each category of staffing for next year, so that when we provide the board with a draft budget, we'll be clear on what those assumptions are, what the FTEs are, and so on. I don't know if I can just click over. I might have closed. So I was gonna click on a financial statement as well, but I think I closed it. I'm happy to do that. There's a oh, I know where it is. Sorry, I just remembered. Hopefully just to kind of tie everything together here as I wrap up. When I go to here, and then I go, oh, that's not what I had in mind. I'm forgetting how to share my my Google thingy. You know, when I have all those tabs, Andy, you're the pro at that. You know, when you have a whole bunch of tabs on your Google browser. I just wanted to I wanted to share a couple of tabs. Oh, maybe no, I don't know. Okay, I'm guessing you're not dying to see more financial information, so. I'll leave it at that and take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Frank. Any questions? I just want to encourage board members, if you have a question and you just think, well, it's late, or well, I'll ask another time, or well, I don't need to know, please ask the question, because probably most of us have the same question. So please, if there's anything at all, I mean, there'll be lots of questions when we see the budget. But anywhere along the line, it's a lot of information, and the best way is to ask questions. You hit it out of the park, Frank.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move along to the committee reports, starting with leadership councils. According to the agendas, between now and our last meeting and this meeting, Academy, Guilford, Oak Grove, and Putney met. So I wonder if we could have reports from those from Academy, and we'll start with Academy. Leadership Council report of your meeting.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we had a meeting last Thursday. And I don't know if Kelly is on. Let me just see.
No, I don't see her.
I don't see her on, so I can kind of report out for it. So we really went into, I have to look back on my notes, David. Can I go in a few minutes?
Yeah, we can go out of order. Well, maybe we can hear from Guilford. Sean?
Yeah, unfortunately, I missed the Leadership Council.
Well, Beth is here.
Last Friday. I think it's the first one I've missed in a while. So, so I can't really give a report. I didn't even.
Beth is here. We could ask her to.
Yeah,
Sure.
good.
Great. Go ahead, Beth.
Also, Beth could mention the meeting tomorrow, which is at 6:30 to 7:30, which is she can give the details about that, which will be community involvement for people that can't come at the usual time. So thank you.
Thank you,
Absolutely. Sure. So we met last Friday and we had a pretty full agenda. We started out by talking about developing some standard agenda items that we categorized monthly, which would give us an outline for our agendas going forward and some structure to our meeting, so we knew what to look forward to and make sure that we visited the topics that we should be visiting at the time we should be visiting them. We also reviewed the Climate Crisis Task Force policy proposal, and we'll be drafting up some notes, Sean, to provide to you to give feedback to the board. We rescheduled one of our initiatives to reach out to both remote and hybrid families and come up with some community events. It was originally going to be a Halloween parade through the schoolyard via vehicles around our school circle. However, we had to reschedule it because of the first snowfall. So we're now planning to do a thankful parade, which will be held sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, where families and students can create posters that we will hold up as we drive through, highlighting things that we're thankful for. We also discussed, as Sean mentioned, our quarterly meeting. We are planning to hold quarterly meetings in the evenings so that we can reach out to more folks, because we regularly meet on Friday afternoons, which isn't accessible to a certain population. So hopefully these quarterly meetings will attract some other visitors. And then we did a brief overview of the Guilford school budget and hope to go into some additional details on that and have some interested leadership members in getting involved with the budget planning and helping John to present the budget to the Finance Committee. And that's what we did. If there's any questions, as Sean said, the quarterly meeting tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. via Zoom, and it's on the agenda, which is posted.
Thank you. Emily, it looks like you're ready.
Okay, so I pulled up my notes. So now I remember what we talked about. So we talked a lot about outdoor education. Specifically, Kelly and John were giving reports on what gear was purchased. I know that was the conversation too that the school board had before, to ensure that the schools had the gear that they needed moving into winter. So we reflected on the gear. They already have the rain suits for K-3 and the ponchos for 4-6. And then a little bit of conversation about how they're going to move forward, or kind of maybe request funds for future gear that they need for the winter. Talked a little bit about their permanent structures that they've created behind Academy School to do outdoor education, as well as the trails and other spaces that the kids are accessing. And especially the community bike park and what's kind of going on there, even on the weekend, kids and families accessing that. The second part of their presentation was on the Academy Edition. So I think it was maybe it was before this board, but last board, we talked about the proposed 2,000 square foot addition on the back of Academy to replace the modular unit. And so they were resurfacing that conversation, and I didn't get a clear understanding of when that was going to come up again at the board meeting, but I'm sure that we'll be discussing it as we move forward with the budget. And then they did talk a little bit about the diversity and social justice initiatives going on, but we've already heard about that. So
thank you. Oak Grove.
Yeah, we had a very good meeting. I just love the tone, the informal tone of our LCs at Oak Grove. A few things. First, let's see, the parents wanted to know in a worst case scenario what the protocol is going to be. If a child tests positive for COVID, then what happens? Who notifies, who is notified, and what's the trigger point for closing a school and going fully remote? So they're really asking for, in a worst case scenario, what's going to happen? Who's going to communicate what, and what the protocol is. So that was one discussion. The other one was a question about teaching and learning, and what we're learning during this pandemic about teaching and learning that we can apply post-COVID. That is, what are we doing really well that we want to continue to do when we return to whatever normal may be. The third issue was, as part of this CIP, they're focusing on communication between the schools and the families. So the parents are putting together a very short, concise, three or four item survey of parents to see how satisfied they are with communication, or what thoughts they might have on how the school might better communicate with families. Their parent-teacher forums are going really well. Some students, have never set foot in the school, they haven't even seen the school. So those forums are valuable. And other than that, small notes, watch out for email hackings. A fake Mary was asking for dollars. And that's about it.
Thank you, Tim. A fake Mary, huh?
Yeah.
Yes, fake Mary asked for quite a bit of money and a lot of help, but thankfully she didn't get anything.
Great, thank you.
Until my check.
Yes. Putney Central, and Ruby, you have a nomination. I'm going to ask you to to put the name forward, and then I'll get a motion to approve the new member.
Sure. This is Ruby McAdoo from Putney Central. We've established a meeting cycle where we meet twice a month. This was our first Monday meeting, and it was a little unusual, but it was a great meeting. We had, I think, the last of our focus on our process and intention, where we reestablished meeting norms and talked again about tools we'll be using to organize our work into 2 different buckets: community engagement and values, and then projects and physical support of the school. So we did a little bit of work on that. And then in terms of discussing the projects and things that we're trying to move forward, some of them we're actually moving forward on, around particularly engaging remote kids and the separate cohorts. How do we connect kids in the same class who haven't seen or been in contact with each other for 9 months or for 6 months, however many months they haven't been in contact. We have a class art project that we're trying to work on with the school teacher, a way to kind of have all of the kids collaborate. I think that that might be the first of a series of things, or we might do it at least one other time to try to do a more interactive collage that becomes one unit rather than just a virtual thing. And we did have the first of a parent engagement discussion group around social justice and racial equity. We also have created a social media account on Facebook that's specific to our leadership council, which will allow us to post meetings and share them out ourselves, and the school can pick them up and promote them that way. We can also then engage with the community more independently from the school. The things that we haven't really moved forward on but still are on our agenda, Herb wasn't able to make it to this meeting, and so I need to follow up with him. We still do want to create a class parent structure so that we have the opportunity to support the teachers with things that just are not classroom related, just engaging with parents and connecting our families. And then an outdoor structure analysis. And when I say that, I don't mean paying for or creating or actually doing anything about creating outdoor structures, but really looking at what are our needs, particularly going into the winter. What do we need? And that would be something we need Herb and the teachers support, someone who knows the flow of what's going on. But that's something that I've talked a little bit to Herb about. Also, volunteer supports for tutoring. If there's a way that our community can help to volunteer for tutoring, we want to try to start that. So those are the things in the pipeline. The last thing to mention is that we had the first of the community engagement parent discussion groups at the end of our meeting with the social justice committee, the staff committee that Ellen Tumavikas mentioned. And it was great. Mike Merwicki showed up, which was wonderful. He's a Putney resident and a representative. We also had another parent who came, but it was a great conversation and good connection to that committee. And I think that we do want to talk about having some cycle of engaging with parents and the community around different topics. And so that was the first one. I guess that's it. And I will be giving you a board report, but this one just happened on Monday, so I didn't get around to it. So you may just get one board report per month with our 2 meetings. That's
Thank
all.
you. And you have Amy, a new member?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes, Amy Sugahara is a parent who, yes, would like to be appointed, and we would like to have her appointed to the.
Great. Could I have a motion, please, to appoint Amy Sugahara to the Putney Leadership Council, Putney Central School Leadership Council?
So moved.
Thank you, Liz. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Michelle. Moved and seconded to appoint Amy Sugahara to the Putney Central School Leadership Council. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Having none, Amy is appointed. Thank you, Ruby. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here because listening to all the things with leadership councils, this is for leadership councils that were scheduled between these 2 meetings. if I missed one, please, Ann's hand is up, so it looks like maybe I did miss one.
Well, I'm not sure if you knew about it, Dave.
Well, I looked on the calendar for who had agendas and meetings scheduled on the website, and I just wrote those down. So go ahead.
Well, the Windham Regional Career Center Regional Advisory Board met this afternoon.
Oh, okay, that's different. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I thought we were sort of lumping them in with leadership councils.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
I have a report, and Nancy, if you're still here, please feel free to jump in, cut me off, correct me, anything you'd like, because I sort of scribbled this very fast. Our numbers are down. We are currently at 96 FTE, whereas last year we were at 136. And I'd like to point out that the CTEs of Vermont have been left out of the hold harmless formula. So if you'd like to contact your legislators and urge them to hold the CTE harmless, that would be super. We're hoping to move to 4 days a week for our students in the second semester, but we will have to wait till January to find out what the COVID numbers tell us. I'd also like to point out we're down because many parents are choosing to keep their children in their home districts rather than send them to WSESD, simply because of COVID again. We can't do our LNA clinicals, and we are currently seeking an LNA instructor. And if you know anyone who is qualified, please get in touch with Nancy Weiss as soon as possible. They've been examining the website because we're cut off from students and not able to do in-person visits. So they've been consulting with some firms that also do marketing, and I'm hearing that they're very excited to be discussing a vision for the future and how they see the future, and they're learning new marketing techniques, so they're very pleased. The Perkins grant is almost finished. It's taken over 200 hours of grant writing so far because the application this year is appreciably more detailed. Only 2 centers in Vermont have been approved so far, and usually all of them would have been done in September. And let's see. This center has discovered a problem that Nancy inherited involving scheduling. So we will probably be on a correction plan, and Nancy is working very hard to adjust the scheduling and to see if we can accommodate students who are coming from schools outside our districts better. Sorry, I'm trying to read my own writing. The CTE directors in Vermont are seeking to have the funding formula changed for CTE because every time a student is sent to a career center, funding is removed from their home school, and that's just obviously not working out very well. The Ruth Barton Bench and Award is still being developed thanks to COVID. I was really excited to hear how excited all of the teachers and other administrators were at this meeting. And they brought up a very important point, which is that the students that we graduate from the Career Center are the people who have kept this country running through all of this mess. And I hope we will be able to concentrate a little bit more on the Career Center, and I hope that our legislators will see their way clear to working on funding. Did I get everything, Nance?
You sure did. You did a great job, Ann.
I can send those to Joyce.
Thanks. That would be good.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Perrin?
So the High School Leadership Council met on Monday and had a long discussion about sports and winter sports, and wanted some clarification on what the state's guidelines were, and so we kind of shared those. We spent a lot of time talking about ways to get the Leadership Council at BUHS into a more public footing, and the idea that they have arrived on is that we're going to do a series of public forums on different topics. For example, we may talk about budgeting, we may talk about student scheduling, and just use that as a way to invite parents and to kind of meet the leadership council, learn what the role is, and then kind of get more input as to what are some things that we need to continue to educate our parents and our community on. And it was a good meeting, and we had nice attendance there.
Great. Thank you. I missed that on the agendas, I guess. Okay, I wanted to shift gears a little bit. Hearing all of these activities reminded me that the Communications Council, there was a request for a Leadership Council Summit, which we talked about and put on an agenda for February. But in the meantime, the Communications Council was already undertaking some initiatives. So I wanted to have that be our first committee report because a lot of it relates directly back to the Leadership Councils. So Michelle, would you? Yeah, you've got a couple of things to share.
Yeah, we met this afternoon finally, and there was a few things that were covered, and I'll go right to the Leadership Council stuff. You know, we're looking at how as a communication council, how to support their development through unified communication. And so what we came up with was to create and distribute a contact list of all of the Leadership Council chairs. So we want them to all have access to one another. We want to, when we do that, just point out where they can find meeting minutes and encourage that maybe they browse other minutes from other meetings to give them ideas of things that they might want to put on their agenda. And we don't want to, we're not in a position where we can be in charge of them, but we want to survey those chair members and see, you know, if they have a desire. I know that Ruby has spoken up and said that it was something that she would certainly be interested in. But if there's a desire to come together and meet with the other chairs, it doesn't have to be a whole Leadership Council summit, but just for them to come together to brainstorm and communicate and talk about what they're doing and where they see their potential to go. And if so, we have some ideas on how we can help facilitate that just by surveying times and helping that come together for them. One thing that we do, and I'm kind of hearing this theme, some of the schools, I know a lot of leadership councils are still very much in the developmental phase and trying to navigate how to get, you know, a strong structure. Some of the schools have already been announcing leadership council meetings and to their entire school population when they come up, the week they come up, and then sending out that invitation with the agenda to their entire school population. And so we feel that that's just the most, it makes a lot of sense. It's the most inclusive way to open the doors and pave the path and put it on everyone's radar and let them know that it's an open door, that you don't have to be on the Leadership Council to come and participate, and to give them some, you know, sending the agendas gives them some perspective on what's going to happen and what's being talked about. So it seems like if this is something that we can mandate as a standard, if there's a motion and the board supports it. So I guess I'm motioning, I think I wrote down an actual sentence. I'm motioning that each school's Leadership Council meeting agenda plus access to that meeting be sent as an announcement to their own school-wide base. That makes sense. You're muted, Dave. I can see your mouth moving.
I'm muted, yep. Yes, it does make sense. Could we have a second so we can talk about it?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Okay, so I get the question is, do we need to, or it's to get, let me see, the agenda and link information sent out, distributed to the entire school mailing list or school-wide base?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah, we don't know whether that's happening everywhere. So
to just make it a uniform, that
Yeah.
it's a standard, you know, kind of part of warning a meeting in a way,
Right.
to distribute that the week of the Leadership Council meeting to families.
oh, Andy, good. I was just going to ask you if you had any thoughts on that, or just what do you think?
I'm jumping right to implementation. I think that's a great idea, Michelle. I would just kindly suggest that there's a decent window of time, so it's not a last minute, like, oh, hey, by the way, there's tomorrow, and then people are scrambling. So maybe
Right.
give them a 2-week lead time or a week and a half lead time to get that out. I think that's manageable.
Great. Michelle, would you add a time frame, a 2-week time frame for people to prepare
Yes.
for that? Because I think this falls on the principals, right? I mean, they're the ones that send out the agendas, not the chairs, or they may be the same person.
I would imagine it would go through either the school newsletter or via a robo message.
Right.
It probably better I would imagine I would leave it up to the principals to figure out the best place for each community, but I would imagine it would go best into a newsletter if they're sending out an e-newsletter, so that some like consistent place where people look.
So my perspective on that is actually that I think that parents probably don't want 2 weeks notice. I'm a little bit concerned that 2 weeks, if they find out 2 weeks ahead of time, that it's just going to get lost on their radar. We get a lot of emails, and I agree. Do we need any timeline? I mean, maybe when it goes out. Sometimes I get our next agenda the next day, and sometimes I get it 3 days before, or the 2 days before. So, is a timeline even necessary? Outside of.
Is that what you were asking, Andy? Or are we just saying a couple of weeks for people to get used to the idea of doing it?
I was just thinking to try to avoid the situation if you catch if a principal's out of the building and they get, oh, hey, can you send this out for tomorrow? And they're not near a computer or they're not near their ability to access it. So as long as we give people a couple of days lead time to get that information out, it's not difficult to send a robo message out. You just need to have your interface in front of you.
Right. So it's not that the agenda has to go out 2 weeks ahead of time, but that there be a couple of weeks to get the systems in place and figure out.
Until we implement this?
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if we give people at least a couple of days. So like, I would just like to avoid this situation saying, hey, Steve, can you send this out for me tomorrow to all your parents?
Can we say that the meeting agenda and Zoom invitations be sent as an announcement within a week of the meeting? Yeah. Is that reasonable?
I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, starting in a week.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we understand what we're voting on. Basically, we're voting to have the agenda, the Leadership Council agendas sent to the and information sent to, and the linking information sent to the school-wide base for upcoming meetings. Is there any discussion? I think okay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. That was easy.
David, for the minutes, who moved and who seconded?
Michelle moved and Liz seconded.
There are a couple other things on our report. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Going? So, the other two big things we have a pretty good handle now on actually creating that the email list that we've been working at, to create an email list that's not just for our school community, it'd be district wide to all stakeholders. It will go through town clerks and whatnot, and it's just a place where people can sign up have the agendas for board meetings, committee meetings, or leadership council meetings of their interest. If they want to have that arrive in their emails, just a place for them to sign up and they get added to that list. So that, I think, should be pulled together and hopefully distributed by our next meeting, which we meet once a month. And so the other thing was just addressing the WSESD website. And the improvements that we need to see to just make it a more simplified, user-friendly access. It's just very difficult. It takes a lot of effort. It's not the way the website is structured. It's like so organized that that you have to look really hard. You have to go to many pages, and then it's very tricky to navigate. And we're really asking people to work. And our goal that we're envisioning is just creating just an open door, and not making it hard for people, so that it's right in front of them what their choices are. So we're realizing, that we all know what our perspective is, but we really want to look for feedback from the community on when they visit the website. What are they going to the website for primarily? Is it because they want to know about meetings? Is it because they need a school district calendar? Is it, hearing earlier, is it because you want to know if this town has preschool, availability? And so we're thought that the best way to do that would just be to ask specifically, I'm asking the board members, if you could have your next leadership council, that group that you're part of, have it added to the agenda, and specifically ask that question to the leadership council to just brainstorm for a minute and address the question of when utilizing the district website, what information do families need most accessible, and what are you looking for? And we just want to get a wider scope of feedback, because we're going to be working on creating a list of improvements that we see that need to be made, and how we think it will be more user friendly, and that's going to help us work on fixing the website. So does that work for everyone? I can send that question out as a reminder in an email if that would be helpful, but unless it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
All right.
And Andy, I just, you want to respond? I also wanted to ask you, do we have the capacity to look at which places on the website gets the most use or the most clicks? I mean, what's the most popular spot on the website?
That is a good question. And so my question to Michelle was a timeline on that, because we've talked about this as a central office team about doing some upgrades to the website, because you're right, it is clunky. It's difficult to navigate. We have pockets of things. There's not a uniformity or a consistency from one spot to another. There's a lot of great information in different areas, like the teacher resources and that site.
Yeah.
So, one, if there's a timeline on that, that would help us to try to help find someone to help us redevelop the website.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are counters on pages in terms of how it was developed, David. I can check with Gary on that to see if we get a handle on that.
There's not.
Okay.
We tried last year. There's not a way to do it.
No way to tell where people are going?
Not with the platform that's being used, as far as I know.
Thanks. Great. So maybe we should, so I think what you're saying is that maybe we want to have the leadership councils in the next month. I mean, obviously we got plenty to do and the holidays are coming and everybody's really busy, but maybe in the next month, have that on the agenda, just a brainstorm for what do you go search for? What do you think people find most important, so that there'd be some guidance for the restructuring and the redesigning of it?
Yeah, and I would say that doesn't need to be, unless I'm wrong, that doesn't need to be like reported back here. Like if it can just be added to whenever each leadership council is going to meet next, to put on their agenda. And then if the board members want to send it back to me, because we also have our own jobs of going through the website and working on specifics. So, if that would hasten the whole process, just jot down what you hear and just shoot me that list from each of your leadership councils, so that we can put it all together and look for themes and things like that. And that would be great. I mean, ideally, leadership councils are meeting, and our next communication, the communication committee is going to be meeting every third Wednesday, so before the second board meeting of each month. So if I had that information, before that next meeting a month from now, we should have plenty of time to work with it, and then hand it over to Andy, and we could talk more then. Is that
great?
Okay.
Sounds like a plan. I'll make a note to follow up on that, to get it out to the leadership councils, just in case it needs another reminder. Okay, thanks, Michelle. The Policy and Amendment and Policy Committee met. Anne, would you like to give us? Oh, wait. Oh, no, we've got the policies coming up. Should we just do that instead of a report of the committee end? Because that's what we did.
Oh, sure.
Okay,
I think
I can't think of anything else that we would report.
no, other than we tabled discussion on
Oh, right,
the environmental policy so that Thomas could attend our next meeting,
right.
which is scheduled for the 24th at 4:30.
Great. Thank you. And the PPEC met. Emily, would you like to give us an update?
Sure. So we met last time and we discussed, oh, can you hear me again?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we met last time and we got an update on a few different things. So first thing we discussed was our Title IX report and kind of re-going into that. And Chris Sawyer was at the meeting, as was Andy. And we started to just brainstorm how we could, or what next steps we could actually pursue, given that we didn't want to, be putting out a ton of things that seemed like management of the school district. So we now are tasked, essentially each group of, each subgroup on the PPEC committee retook their sections of the Title IX report and are going into them to look at maybe some things that might be policies we'd like to adopt as an entire school district. So the intention was next time we'll all be coming back, hearing from each other, and then kind of coordinating an overall proposal to then give back to the school board. That was the first thing. The second thing we did was we were really interested in the engagement data actually that you presented tonight, Andy, around students during this COVID pandemic, and specifically around remote learning and students who have limited internet access. So Paul Smith and Andy shared with us some information on how we're working to get students internet who don't have internet or who have limited access. And so we're going to continue to pursue gathering more and more information on that, as well as students who are low engagement on looking at their academic experience and interventions that are going on around that, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on with teams at each of the schools. So we're just looking to gather information on that and then to act as a partner in kind of expanding and ensuring all students are receiving an equitable shake at adequate education.
Thank you. We had the Communications Council report. The Social Justice Committee, Thomas, you met, I think, after our last meeting?
No, it wouldn't have been after our last meeting. Our next meeting is going to be in early December, but it wouldn't be. But
the meeting I missed was 2 weeks ago.
yeah, that was from before our last meeting.
Right, thank you. Those are the committees that were scheduled on the website. Were there any other committees that met that I skipped over? Okay, we have no unfinished business. We have a proposal in new business to to take action on scheduling or proposing an Australian ballot vote on town meeting day. If we are unable, because of the pandemic, to hold our annual public meeting, to have people gather in person, we will need again to have an Australian ballot, because people won't be able to show up and vote from the floor. So in anticipation of that, the suggestion is that we schedule it for town meeting day, when people will be voting hopefully on a lot of things, and which is March 16th, 2021. And the budget, the district officers, the board salaries will be voted via Australian ballot on town meeting day. Actually, I'm sorry. I messed up those dates. Town meeting day is March 2nd. If we can have an annual meeting, it would be March 16th, but we are probably not going to be able to. So we want to, for notification purposes and for annual report purposes, we want to propose scheduling that ballot for March 2nd. So is there any question? We don't have a motion yet, which we'll put one together. But first I want to ask, are there any questions or confusions or better ideas than Australian ballot that anyone wants to share? Frank? Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I also put a revised budget timeline on under the board's agenda. I could share it with you now if you'd like to just glance at it. It does have implications about the budget hearing, you know, the required budget hearing and the distribution of the annual report. And then the date in which the board has to approve the warning.
Yeah, I think it's probably, I think it'd probably be worth it to, it's almost 9 o'clock, but I think that you have a look at that just to make sure that this is all going to fit together.
Here's the document. It again is right under the November 18 board agenda. But so what we're looking at here is March 2nd instead of the 16th as we had originally planned. And then backing up the dates, Barb has looked at this with Andy and I. We would need that budget information meeting within 10 days. Unfortunately, that's that school break, but you know, it has to occur within 10 days by law. But just going backwards from those dates, we would want to make sure that we had annual report in the circulation on the 10th. And that means we need to have something ready to go to the printer by the 26th, which would mean we need the board to have their final budget vote on the 21st and approve a warning. That gets us within the no earlier than 40 days, no less than 30 days prior to the meeting. Still allows us, if we have three meetings, what we've proposed is the December 16 first draft, then the January 6 second draft, and then January 20 third draft. It still allows for the same number of reviews, but it would require us to have another meeting that is not normally scheduled. So these are all our normal Wednesdays, the first and third Wednesday, and then this one is the day after. You know, that's the Thursday to meet that statutory requirement.
And we may need to add an additional meeting in there too, depending on how well we get through this. I think the disadvantage of having the vote on the 2nd is, and doing it in this sort of compressed timeline, is that we won't have a lot of the information from the state. So the numbers that we present to the community will be close to what we think, but we just will not know. I think it's even less likely that we'll have it in a timely manner than it has been in the past, because the legislature is going to be meeting remotely as well. But maybe not. Maybe because we're using the same student numbers as last year, it'll be an easier process.
That is the biggest issue.
Yeah, and there is an advantage to waiting until we could. I mean, we waited until June last year, partly because of we didn't know when we'd be able to meet, and we could put it off and have it later. But so anyway, what do people think? I see Liz. What do you think?
What about Brattleboro town meeting? Isn't that one reason that, doesn't the Brattleboro town meeting kind of look at the school budget and stuff?
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
Not okay.
No, neither does
I was just
Putney or
wondering
anybody
about
else.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no.
I was wondering about that piece. Okay.
No, nobody does. No, but the Brattleboro does. They do have a remote town meeting, but the vote is Australian. They have the vote by Australian ballot. Sean.
I think it would be a really good idea to have it on town meeting day. It would be less expensive, and people are all geared on town meeting day to vote. I know it's a little early, but almost better early than late.
Yep.
I mean, June 25th is what we did last year, and that was, kind of piling things up.
Well, it meant we couldn't distribute contracts, which is really insecure and stress producing.
I would definitely be in favor of the March 2nd, at least thinking very seriously, tentatively. If we need a motion tonight, maybe put that March 2nd in and you know, and then I don't know if it could be changed if it didn't work out because we didn't get the information we needed. So.
It can be. Typically, there are ways to change a motion afterwards if for new information. Andy.
Yeah, I would just echo what Sean said. I think that in this time where people are trying to grab onto anything concrete and anything definite that they can, you know, I would try to push for that March 2nd date just so that we can have some things settled for the staff as well and have contracts distributed, especially in light of a really stressful year.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. So any other thoughts?
I would just mention, David, that Barb had checked in with several of the town clerks, and they were very much in favor of the March 2nd as well for those same reasons.
Well, that's another really good reason. I just want to point out that it also means that there are Kelly and I think maybe one or two other people, our terms are up. So we would need to do, I'm not sure how that's going to be, how people are going to be nominated this time. Right now, you have to just put your name in to run for town office. I suspect that's probably what's going to happen. People aren't going to be doing petitions. So the shorter time period wouldn't necessarily affect that. But people need to be thinking about that as well. So Frank, do you have a motion? Do you have language for a motion for this, or should I try to create one out of my the new business item here?
No, I think creating it out of the new business item would be, it's almost there. Yep.
Yep. So actually I'll move that we that the WSESD approve Australian ballot vote on town meeting day, March 2nd, 2021, for the purposes of approving the budget, electing district officers, setting board salaries, etc. And I think I said Australian ballot in the beginning. So that's the motion to do our annual meeting business on March 2nd, 2021 via Australian ballot. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Moved and seconded to make this adjustment in order to get our business done. Any conversation? Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The second new business item is the Amendment and Policy Committee reviewed 3 policies. They are attached to the agenda and also on the district website. D16, electronic communications, basically social media between employees and students. You're welcome to read through this. It's pretty much common sense. You know, basically don't do anything stupid. That's a little oversimplifying, I think. F37, the district equity policy, which is basically articulating our perspective and our view on the importance of equity. And then a very long policy that the VSBA developed based on information from the federal government and from a couple of other organizations for the prevention of sexual harassment related to changes in Title IX. It's very long, very comprehensive, and it includes the 2 things that the board was concerned with last year. One was having specific policy around sexual harassment, and the other was making sure that victims received immediate support. And both of those things are in that policy. I encourage people to read through it. These are really not controversial based on, I mean, they're controversial issues, social media, equity, and sexual harassment, but the policies are not. They're really, I encourage people to have a look at them if you're so inclined. We'll read them again, and then in 10 days after that, we'll have a vote to approve them. So for now, that's it. We have them, they're there. This is the first reading, means you can read them. And so that's it for our agenda. Andy's got a question though.
Just a statement. So it's listed F37 is listed correctly on the agenda under the student policies.
Mhm.
The paper, the actual PDF has D37, and we'll have that corrected. I just wanted to make sure we pointed that out.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Yeah, great. That would be hard to find. Okay, is there any comment from the public on non-agenda items this evening? Items that we did not have on the agenda that you would like to address the board or draw the board's attention to? Seeing none, do we have need for executive session, Andy?
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second, moved by Ann, seconded by Liz. We have a Putney motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Well, thank you again for this excellent level of participation, and we cut it down to 3 hours. So we're on the right path. We're half an hour less than last time, almost an hour less. Thank you, folks. Good night.
Night.
Good night.